Welcome back to our channel, Our Philippine Journey. Thank you for spending time with us. Following up on the story of Boner Boy continues the saga of life as a topless bar owner. Again, for those of you that haven't seen this, I have to repeat it. This was not my career. I owned many investments over my lifespan, over my career span. I spent 40 plus years in medicine. However, I did own multiple non-medical related businesses, and this was one of them. If you'd like to hear that story, it's in the playlist of I Owned a Topless Bar. So let's get going. I had been pretty busy out of town, like Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't know, 3 days, 4 days. Came back in town, got back in about, I don't know, 1 in the afternoon. And although it wasn't really on my way home, it wasn't off the beaten path, I decided I'd swing by the bar and see what was going on. I used to like to drop in on them unannounced. So as I'm approaching the bar, I'm about half a block away, 3/4 of a block. And I notice there's quite a bit of commotion over by the 7-Eleven beside our bar. Hey, what is this? Okay. Well, as I get closer to the bar, I see there are people protesting our bar. So to give you that story, we owned that entire city block. The front of the block was all retail. The back of that block was all parking for that retail. And behind that parking was a neighborhood. But because the bar had existed and was in place long before the zoning laws, that liquor license was grandfathered in. The neighborhood was built around the bar, so to speak. Well, buried back in that neighborhood, a couple streets over, there was a woman. And this woman had been a pain in my ass. So what happens when you transfer a liquor license is that you have to get permission at that point in time. You used to have to get permission from the county and from the city, because we were within the city limits, to do it, to transfer. And that required that you present yourself before the city council. You were scheduled and everything else. And it was pretty much a rubber stamp for me because I had no prior run-ins with the law. In fact, I've never had a run-in with the law. Yeah, pretty much. There was no reason to deny me. Well, there was a woman in this neighborhood who was like what we would call nowadays an activist, what we called back then a pain in the ass. This woman had a purely political desire. She wanted to go and get a seat on the city council. So she did it from a grassroots, very organic situation of, first she put together a daycare for underprivileged children, which turned out to be a scam. But that was years later, they figured that out. And in the meantime, she was sponsoring or getting sponsors to donate money for after-school activities for a school up the street. So when it came time to, about a week before the meeting with the city council, she approached me. And she made it very clear that her support would be necessary. And that in order for me to get her support, she wanted two things. The first thing she wanted was for our signage to be reduced in size. And the second thing she wanted was for me to make a donation to the after-school children's program. Well, I was happy to make a donation to the after-school children's program. But the signage issue was a whole different story. And the reason behind that is because signage was also zoned. And that signage had been grandfathered in. The sign that was there was always 18 feet tall, and it was if I remember correctly, 10-foot wide, 8-foot tall, double-sided sign. In other words, it was, fluorescent, lit up both sides. Now, it wasn't anything ugly. I mean, and when I say ugly, it didn't say like XXX or, anything. It didn't say anything about topless girls. It said gentlemen's club. All right. It didn't say adult entertainment. There weren't any silhouettes of anybody's ass on it. And I had no intention of changing it. And the other reason that I had no intention of changing it was because anything that I reduced that signage by would have been restricted to that from there on. I mean, that's a selling point that on this busy street, 19th Avenue, you have signage rights. Okay? I wasn't going to give that up. That's an asset. Not only that, but I would have to give up the neon lighting. I wasn't going to give that up. So when I went before the city council, we went through this whole issue, and they didn't ask anything about my donation, but they did ask about my signage. And I said I had no intention of changing the sign at this point in time. Maybe down the line I might. Maybe down the line I might change the name. But I intended to keep the size and the type of signage that was there and the height. And that was pretty much the end of it. They approved my transfer. Didn't think another thing about it. About a week goes by, and I have to go out of town on some other business. So I went out of town to take care of some business, came back in town, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, decided to swing by the bar. As I get to the bar, there's a commotion around the bar. Now remember, the bar is right next to this 7-Eleven. In order to get to my back parking lot, where you can park, all right? I mean, I had some parking up front, but most of the parking was all behind the building. I had to turn into the driveway of the place. And it was full of protesters with picket signs. And I was just seething. I knew exactly what it was. This bitch had bandied together her little group of housewives with nothing else to do and decided to protest outside. And I looked, and they were talking, they had like Bible quotes and, I don't know, Luke 3:16 or John 3:16 or, alcohol is the devil's drink and all this shit. I mean, it was really quite annoying. So I finally get into my parking lot, which is about half as much business as I should be getting. And I go inside and I sit down and I talk to Ray. And Ray is like, well, we can't touch them. Can't do anything about it. Can't call the police. As long as they're on the sidewalk, it's legal. And I said, well, we call the police anyways. Well, the police explained to me that Ray was correct. As long as they're on the sidewalk, it's quite legal. They cannot block traffic that's turning in, but they can stand there until traffic turns into the driveway. So I just didn't know what else to do. So Ray says, well, I'll tell you what. I've got an idea. And I said, all right. I said, what's your idea? And he says, oh, you don't really want to know. I guarantee it's not against the law. I guarantee you nobody's going to get hurt. I need $200. I said, I'll tell you what, Ray. I'm going to go drop by the office, grab a bite of lunch. Here's $200. I'll be back in an hour and a half. He says, oh, that's perfect. And off I go. About an hour and a half goes by. I get in the car and I drive back over. Well, now there's like twice as many people protesting. And so I whip into the parking lot across the street to get a good look as to what's going on, because now the 7-Eleven's even full. And I look, and there's Ray. And there's about 20 girls. And they've got little picket signs just like the protesters. The girls are all dressed up in little Daisy Dukes and halter tops. That was about as skimpy as we could get in public back in those days. All right? No bikinis or anything like that. And they're protesting. And Ray's in the middle of it. Good old boner boy. And I look at the girls' signs, because they're not real big, They were put together in a heartbeat. He took that $200 and went out to Target or Walmart or wherever and bought whatever he needed. And there's Ray and the girls walking right beside these protesters, carrying signs, says, "We serve all sinners. Happy hour, 11 to 3. Well, now I've got the news people out there. I've got 2 or 3 squad cars out there. I've got half a dozen girls up and down the street protesting. Half a dozen girls up and down the street protesting. And they're all marching right beside these old housewives. And it turned out that that was a pretty damn good deal. Worked out quite well. What Ray did was told the girls, go change into some shorts and a cute top, and you don't have to pay house fees today or tomorrow. Take this sign, march up and down the street. And they did, and quite honestly, we had a great afternoon bar business. And all their signs were, "We serve all sinners." All right? Because the protesters were using the backdrop of the Bible and God and sinners and everything else. Ray thought it, Boner Boy thought it up. We had a great time. And I talked to the police, and the police said, no, what you're doing, totally legal. Nothing wrong with it at all. The only bad part was I got a lot of news coverage that particular Not a lot, okay? I probably got like 3 minutes of news coverage, but that's 3 minutes more than I would normally get. And I was really worried about how that was going to impact any problems I was going to have with the liquor board. I ended up not having any problems with the liquor board, and apparently the free publicity and public relations on all three of the major news channels that night, local, Phoenix news channels, not national channels, had us in there, and we had a great 2-3 weeks. So that's the story of We Serve All Sinners. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe. Hit that thumbs up. It really helps us a lot. And maybe next week we'll do another one. Thanks. Have a great night.